Thanks. So thank you everybody for joining us today for our Careers in Biotechnology webinar. For those online who don't know who I am, my name is Dr. Lisette Prigel and I'm a lecturer in the Biotechnology program here at UQ. We've got a wonderful panel discussion lined up for you today to talk about their careers and experience in the biotechnology industry and share some tips and tricks with you about employability and some of their decision making throughout their careers. And I'm also going to be joined in a moment by Bishak Gang-Saranda, who is the president of our Biotechnology Student Society. And between Bishak and myself, we will be guiding our panelists through a really interesting set of questions for you today. So I hope you will learn something and become really excited about the biotechnology industry, as I and our panelists here today certainly are. A little bit of housekeeping before we formally get started. Today's webinar is being recorded. We will be sharing the webinar recording with you via email after today's session. If you'd like to ask questions throughout the session, please do so using the Q&A function here. It's the Q&A function is located at the bottom of your Zoom screen. We will be answering some of those questions throughout the chat, throughout the session, via the chat function. We're also going to have a live Q&A session towards the end of this hour, where our lovely panelists will be able to answer some of these questions live for you as well. So feel free to pop your questions in the chat using the Q&A function as we go. If we don't answer it immediately after you posted it, please don't worry, because it could be that we are saving that really interesting question towards the end of our session, once the panel has concluded our discussion today. So just as an initial introduction, I'd just like to acknowledge acknowledgement of country. So the University of Queensland acknowledges the traditional owners and their custodianship of the lands on which UQ operates. We pay our respects to their ancestors and their descendants who continue cultural and spiritual connections to country. We recognise their valuable contributions to Australia, to Australian and global society. So just a bit of an outline of what we're going to be covering today and how the session is going to proceed. We're going to start with just a little bit of an overview of what is biotechnology, and this is specifically targeted at those of you in the audience who may not really understand thoroughly what biotechnology actually is, or maybe considering a career in biotechnology or studying biotechnology at UQ. So we'll give you a bit of an overview about what we see biotechnology is and how important it is for society. We'll then proceed to our panel discussion. And then towards the end of the session, we'll open to question and answers. So to kick us off today, well, what actually is biotechnology? And I'd just like to acknowledge, first of all, this lovely picture of Abel Robertson here, who is the director of our biotechnology program here at UQ, for those of you who don't know. At its simplest, biotechnology is a technology based on biology. Biotechnology harnesses cellular and biomolecular processes to develop technologies and products that help improve our lives and the health of our planet. And this is the definition of biotechnology that's come from the BioOrg, which is the biotechnology industry organization based in the US. We also like to look at different and diverse understandings of biotechnology here at UQ. So here's the definition of biotechnology from the OECD. And they define biotechnology as the application of science and technology to living organisms, as well as parts, products, and models thereof, to alter living or non-living materials for the production of knowledge, goods, and services. And there's a couple of really key, sorry, one second, my daughter's, oh, she's just gone. She's gone to earring court. Sorry about that. There's a couple of really key terms that we like to pull out of these definitions, because I think it really does get to the core of what biotechnology is. And that's using cellular and biomolecular processes, or applying cellular and biomolecular processes to create goods and services that have value and meaning for society. And this is quite broad, and that's okay. And you'll see that because we think about biotechnology as a rainbow. There's such a different broad area of biotechnology across medical biotechnology, which is red, green biotechnology, which is agricultural focus, and blue biotechnology, which is more marine, and then even into white biotechnology, which is what we think about as synthetic biology or synthetic biotechnology. And we're quite proud of our biotechnology program here at UQ. For about 4 or 5 years now, we've been ranked consistently as #1 in Australia for biotechnology, but also #7 globally in the world. And this is according to the global rankings of academic subjects, which we also refer to sometimes as the Shanghai rankings. And being #7 in the world, we're up there with some of the major, most famous universities like Harvard and MIT. So we're really proud of our efforts and our contribution to biotechnology throughout the world. And just a little bit of an aside before I hand over to Vishak, just about our biotechnology programs here at UQ, particularly for those thinking about studying biotechnology or recent alumni who are joining us, who may not be aware that we've actually restructured the program slightly and introduced some new fields of study into our postgraduate biotechnology suite of programs. So across our different masters and postgraduate options of study, we have now 3 fields of study where you may specialise if you wish: agricultural biotechnology, medical biotechnology, and synthetic biology and industrial biotechnology. And we've also got extended majors in our Bachelor of Biotechnology that align also with our fields of study in our master's program. So we now have 5 extended majors in the Bachelor of Biotechnology: agricultural biotechnology, chemical and nanobiotechnology, medical biotechnology, molecular and microbial biotechnology, and synthetic biology and industrial biotechnology, as well as 2 minors in bioinformatics and innovation and entrepreneurship. So the program is designed to give you a solid grounding in science of biotechnology. So I'd like to hand over now to Vishak to talk about one of the new initiatives that's been introduced recently, and that's our UQ Biotechnology Student Society. So Vishak.
Thank you so much, Lisette. And hello, everybody. My name is Vishak, and I've been elected as the president of the Biotechnology Society for next year. And I'm so happy to see so many of you out there in the audience today, and so many of you with a passion for biotechnology, because at the heart of it, that's what our society is built upon. We're a group of highly motivated, passionate, and ambitious students in biotechnology, really wanting to change the world. And our society offers a various amount of events throughout the year to help build a unifying cohort experience in biotechnology. If you're studying biotechnology at UQ, it's a must that you have to join the UQ Biotechnology Society. We host events throughout the year that'll help get you connected with industry professionals from a variety of industry research labs and labs here at UQ. We'll help improve your employability, and we're here to give you that support. So whether you're joining us for the program from Brisbane or internationally, we're here to support you. And it's such a great opportunity to make lifelong friends and engage in biotechnology. Some of the friends who I've made in the Biotechnology Society, I know I'll have them as friends for the remainder of my life. And if you look at the photo that's up here on the screen at the top, that is from our industry event where we had 5 or 6 different major key industry players in biotechnology in the Southeast Queensland region come and advertise all of their services to students. And it was a great opportunity to get this early exposure. So regardless of what you're studying and the level of your study, whether you're a first-year biotechnology student in your bachelor's or whether you're in your PhD, we've got something for everyone. And I think it's a really amazing opportunity to get involved in biotechnology and open up the extracurricular aspects to it. But without any further ado, I'd like to introduce the all-star host of panelists today. And we're so fortunate to have these 3 panelists because from me just sitting here, I'm so glad that I'm able to host a webinar with these people. They're very inspirational. So I'll start off with Dr. Arjuna Kumar Surya. So Arjuna graduated with a Bachelor of Biotechnology with honours and then went on to complete his PhD in Biomedical Sciences here at UQ. And he's now the Senior Director of Commercial Operations at Illumina. So Arjuna, would you like to start by introducing yourself and your career journey into biotechnology after you graduated?
Sure thing. Thank you, Vishak. And let me take this opportunity to thank you guys for inviting me to be here. It's great to be able to speak to so many people around the world and share my experiences. So I actually joined when I did a biotechnology degree. I actually started in a science degree and switched halfway through. And maybe that's a story I can share later about why. And so my PhD was really a means to an end. I always knew I wanted to get into industry. And during my PhD, I dabbled at a few things part-time. In summer holidays, I worked in a biotechnology company that was based at QIMR at the time. I worked in the Queensland Government's Biotechnology Regulation Unit. And I also got some opportunities to work at UniQuest, which does the tech transfer for the University of Queensland, as many of you know. And that really gave me some great foundations to kind of go into more tech transfer work after I finished my PhD. But it was actually only 9 months into the job that effectively Illumina found me. Again, a story I can share later on, but I started in sales, went into marketing, various leadership positions, and I've been running operations for the last 6 years. During that time, I managed to live in Singapore for 12 years, in Melbourne for about 18 months, and Brisbane in between.
Thank you so much, Arjuna, and it's very great to have your diverse set of experiences on the panel tonight. I'll move on to the next panels tonight, and we have Miss Tara Buse. So Tara graduated with a Bachelor of Biotechnology with honours, specialising in nanotechnology, and she's now the Senior Scientist of Operations at Vaxxas. So Tara, would you like to introduce yourself and your career journey in biotechnology since you've graduated?
Hi, so I was only a graduate in 2018. So I graduated and then had probably what felt like the longest time in the world until about July the following year, where I actually started my science career. So I started working as a junior scientist at a place called UQ Bio here in Brisbane. They're a CDMO, so they contract manufacture various pharmaceutical goods. And so I learned a lot of skills there. I went from a junior to a mid-level scientist within there. And then recently I made the jump to Vaxxas, where now I can apply those skills that I've learned at Luina to a slightly different company where we manufacture medical devices instead.
Thank you, Tara. And it's so great to have someone who's just recently graduated from biotechnology, and it's great to have that fresh set of eyes on our panel today. So thank you, Tara. I'll move on to the next and final panelist for today, and that's Avi Oliveros. So Avi graduated with a Master of Biotechnology here at UQ, and he's now the Senior Production Scientist at Illum. So Avi, would you like to start by introducing yourself and your career journey since graduating?
Yeah, as I was saying, I'm from originally from the Philippines. I graduated in chemistry, and then 2 years later, I moved here in Brisbane to study Masters of Biotechnology. So my career started as intern in Thermo Fisher as a junior scientist, and then later on, I moved to several roles in quality management and regulatory affairs in registering biopharmaceutical drugs, and then moved to medicinal cannabis, and then currently here in Illum, doing medical practice. And currently the focus film is in COVID diagnostic products.
Yes, great. And thank you, Avi, for that introduction. So I'd like to move on to the first question of today's panel discussion. So for members of the audience who may be new to biotechnology, could you detail what your average day looks like in industry, what your day-to-day activities are, and how might it be different to a career in research? So I'll start off with you, Dr. Arjuna.
Sure. Yeah, it's been a while since I've been on the bench, but yeah, it is quite different these days. So even though I did a PhD and spent a lot of time in the lab, I haven't been lab side for getting close to 15 years. So my days these days involve a lot of Zoom and Microsoft Teams calls. I actually spend about 70% of my time in meetings with colleagues around the world, either team members, and they can vary from, working on projects, doing one-on-ones, reviewing, development, right? So investing in my team members and making sure that they're developing and growing. Again, problem solving, firefighting. The remaining 30% of my time is working on my own projects, right? So usually I have a few different things going on. And just a brief introduction, I guess my team is responsible for, again, addressing the execution, I guess, of our commercial team, which is our customer facing team, and trying to make them more efficient and effective in creating customer value. So generally speaking, we're working on processes, we're working on improving systems, training, analytics, doing project management. So there's a lot of back-end things that are really kind of being worked on. So we've got multiple projects going on at once in different domains, quite complex, but my days are usually involved keeping an eye on those things and working through what I can on my own as well.
Yes, amazing. And Tara, I'll ask you the same question again because you recently graduated. So what are your day-to-day activities and how might it be different to a career in research?
So my role is actually somewhat dabbling within the R&D space as well as the manufacturing space. So there's a process that we use in manufacturing in order to sort of concentrate vaccines down to be used in needle-free patches. And so this process of concentration is my specialty. And so I would say probably my day-to-day is about 30% of project meetings because that process is used across almost all of our projects at Vaxxas. And so I'm heavily involved within both the engineering of the processes that we use as well as the clinical manufacture. So my day-to-day is probably about 20% R&D and then 80% clinical manufacture of our medical devices to be used in clinical trials.
Oh, amazing. Thank you, Tara. And I'll also ask you, Avi, the same question. So what are your day-to-day activities like and how do you think it might differ from a research-oriented career?
Let me just do a mic test. Is that clear enough?
Yes, that's very, very clear.
All right. Sorry earlier. My everyday, basically my day-to-day work, being a senior production scientist, I actually lead 6 scientists under me, and it's actually a shift work. So we have a 6 to 2 p.m. shift and a 1:30 to 10 p.m. shift, and I'm assigned on the PM shift. And then we basically have a expectation set for the day, the targets that needs to be manufactured, especially that now that we are scaling up for to address COVID. And our product is currently focusing on diagnostics for COVID for a home-based test kit. And then it's just a day-to-day coordination of the of fellow scientists so that everything that is outlined will be delivered as expected. And then coordination of cross-functional teams in quality, regulatory affairs, even business people sometimes, and engineerings and validation people as well, and also the outside support team as well.
Yes, thank you, Avi. And now onto the burning question that I'm sure everyone in the audience, they want to know the answer to. And I'll direct this to you, Avi, first. So how did you approach industry and your first job? And can you reflect on your job seeking process as to how you got a job or who you spoke to get a job in the industry?
So initially, my focus is not really a job hunting. I just wanted to maximize the opportunity that the biotech program has to offer. So towards the end of my semester, second year, last semester, one of the lecturers presented about biopharmaceutical company, and they at that time during 2030 they were a startup company. And then I approached Dr. Vito Ferro, who is the coordinator of industry engagement and also liaise for placements in the industry. And then I told him the way that the manager explained the technology was amazing, and I kind of picture myself growing into that field. And then a month later, he told me, you were invited for an interview, and then that's how it happens. And then basically I enrolled 8 units of my subject so that it will become a placement. So one thing I really like about Masters in Biotechnology is the flexibility to offer different programs. And one of it is doing placement instead of doing coursework, and able to tailor your interest to your future prospects of career.
Thank you.
Yeah, and to add, after I finished my placement in there, after I submitted my final report, the management offered me a job and said, would you like to start a junior scientist position? And that pretty much jumpstart my career in biotechnology.
Wow, that's amazing. I'm sure people of the audience would have got a lot of value out of that. So thank you, Avi, for that. And yeah, I'd also like to ask you, Tara, the same question, because it would be more recent, you applying to your job at Vaxxas. So could you please outline how you approached getting your first job?
Yeah, so I had a bit of an unlucky experience when I sort of started off coming out of UQ. A few people I knew in my degree had definitely gone down the route of doing the graduate programs with, say, like CSL and Pfizer. And so some of them had gotten jobs through that, but those programs are often extremely competitive and very few spots are actually offered in them. So a few of my other friends in my degree had a bit of a delayed start, I'll say, to the real world. So actually keeping in contact with a lot of the people that I'd done my degree with actually helped me quite a lot in terms of, you know, hearing about companies I'd never heard before. Getting in contact with scientific recruiters was another thing that really helped me out. But yeah, definitely tailoring your job application experience is something I don't think is talked about enough. A lot of students just sort of send out a general resume and a general cover letter and just sort of sees what sticks. Often they usually get a QC type role or a testing role, which, you know, most of the time students aren't really satisfied with and often leave those roles and they don't really get a solid position within science. And so getting in contact with recruiters and actually talking to people in the field was a huge advantage. And that's how I got my first role at Luina, because I spoke to people and they really needed someone with recombinant protein experience. And that's what I did for my honors program. So that was my ticket in.
Oh, that's amazing, Tara. And I know here at the Biotechnology Society and even the SCMB, we're looking next year to help get some of these industry experts onto the UQ campus to network with students. So it's a great interlude towards what we'll be doing next year. And yeah, also, Dr. Arjuna, I wanted to ask you as well, applying for your first job, that might have been quite a few years ago now for you, but you do have quite a vast experience going through a variety of positions. So could you run through how you went through getting from one position to another position and moving up through the hierarchy of the biotechnology industry?
Yeah, it's a good question. And maybe the first thing to mention is it's again, Avi and Tara's advice was really spot on. What's funny is Avi, I actually work with Vito Ferro as well at Progen. So that's the first lesson. Look, the biotech industry is actually a pretty small world, right? So when all things are said and done. So, you know, when people say network, you know, yeah, networking helps, but it's more about doing your research, right? So one of the things I did, I remember as a student, I attended Oz Biotech conferences as a student delegate. Really, really great way to actually see the industry mingle, observe who's who in the industry, which companies are up and coming, the various sectors in the biotechnology industry. That's one of the really cool things about biotechnology is there are many, many hats, right? It's not just kind of one flavor and, you know, everyone's like a lawyer, right? For example, lawyers are part of that, for example, when it comes to intellectual property. So part of it is observing and understanding. The second thing is, you know, today I still get a lot of LinkedIn requests almost every day where someone will go, hey, I'm interested in a job. What have you got for me? And it's kind of like, well, how about you do some research on your side about what my company does and say you're interested in something specific. And then we've got a conversation to get going. So, you know, your career is your responsibility. So if you want someone's help, make it easy for them to help you, right? Is probably one of the first things I'd say. Kind of saying, here's my CV, tell me what will work for me. Show that you've done some work. And to do that, a couple of key advice or pieces of advice from me. One is, like I said, map out the industry, right? And you don't need to know everything, but start somewhere, you know, and it starts by learning, you know, what biotechnology companies are out there, the sorts of roles that they're advertising, gives you an idea of the types of work that they're doing as well. Also gives you an idea, most job descriptions, by the way, even if they're not entry level, they may be for, you know, more senior experienced individuals. One of the key things all job descriptions include is a list of requirements and experience. So just by kind of reading a few job descriptions, you get an idea of the expectations within an industry of, well, if that's a role I'm interested in, what sort of experience do I need to accumulate in order to kind of put myself in a position further down the track? And they're usually quite specific. Having said all of that, you can plan for success. You can plan basically to open doors. But I think when I reflect on all my different transitions in my career, most of them hit me sideways when I least expected it. And what generally happened was I, did something that I thought was innocuous, right? I volunteered to do a project, or I decided to sit on a panel, for example, or whatever it might be. And then from there, you make connections, you make, people observe you when you least expect it. And from there, something kind of gets nurtured and people say, hey, would you be interested in doing this? It seems you've got these particular sets of experience. And it usually starts small and it just builds up over time. And I think you kind of look back, and certainly when I look back over kind of 20 years and navigate or try and follow the navigation I've taken, you couldn't have charted that course from the start, right? It's just almost impossible. So it really is about creating the opportunities for yourself by getting out there, just starting somewhere, talking to people, doing some research yourself. And over time, you'll get more of those contact points that lead to things when you least expect it.
Thank you, Dr. Arjuna. That is 100% correct, and I 100% agree with you. And it's funny that you mentioned that you went and attended to some of Oz Biotech events. I know, and I'm sure some of the panelists, some of the other audience members might be interested. So Oz Biotech, AUS Biotech, they're hosting an end of year event in Brisbane CBD this Thursday evening. So if you guys want to go and register to that, just like find it on their website. I'll be there, so you can come by and say hello to me. Please introduce yourself. It'll be lovely to meet you all. But yeah, they're hosting an event, so I thought it might be worthwhile sharing with you guys. But yeah, to move on to the next question, and I'll open this up to any of the three panelists. So how did your biotechnology degree add to your employability? And was there anything specific about your biotechnology education at UQ that has particularly helped you in your career journeys?
Probably go first. What I really like about the Master's Biotech program where I finished is that it offers a lot of diverse background in biotechnology. So in my case, I have a background in medical device technology and pharmaceuticals. The program has prepared me to understand what is expected for a highly regulated industry. So these are the good manufacturing industry, quality management systems, ISO standards, that something you could probably not introduce when you are in your undergrad. So coming from a chemistry background, those terminologies are quite alien to me, but I was really prepared to this, and they were really tailored so that the graduates of this master's or postgraduate program is ready to actually apply the knowledge that a biotechnologist professional is expected to do. So yeah, that's for me.
Thank you, Avi. And Tara, would you like to add anything to that?
Yeah, I'm straight off the bat 100% agree. Like all of the GMP knowledge, quality assurance, quality control information that the biotech program actually does drill home quite well, I'd say, definitely helped me. That was one of the interview questions actually in my first role. What is GMP and what do you know about it? So coming into a highly regulated industry, it's kind of an expectation that you know what that is, because it is industry's bread and butter. On top of that, you would be quite surprised how many industries actually use nanotechnology. As someone who came into doing a nanotechnology major as, oh, it sounds cool and I kind of like chemistry, we'll see how it goes. Most companies I've worked for have often had something to do with nanotechnology, either be viral filtration or needle-free vaccines in my current case. So I think that diverse knowledge that you wouldn't particularly find in your run-of-the-mill science degree really helped me. The biotechnology program also allowed me to do a bunch of electives that were, say, in microbiology, for example, which ended up being the crux of my first job, actually, not really chemistry at all. So I think that diverse background and the ability to learn new skills, especially within like commercialization and just being aware of how the industry actually works. So from clinical trials to manufacturing to where all these distribution networks actually fit into the real world was something that I definitely took with me into my first job.
Thank you so much, Tara, for that. And many biotechnology students, oh, sorry, Arjuna, did you want to add anything else to that?
Yeah, just real quick, I completely agree with Tara's last point. It's just that awareness of, the commercial setting. So obviously science is more about, kind of pushing the frontiers of knowledge, whereas, biotechnology requires that spin on things to kind of go, how can we commercialize this, right? How can we make this sort of, obviously you're designing something for benefit to society, and you need to kind of figure out how you can make it economically viable so that it continues to scale and continues to be useful. So I think the B Biotech program, it gives you a really good foundation in those components. I mean, even today I can reflect the highlight for me was doing the product development proposal project in third year. That required me, in my honors year at least, to actually talk to the UniQuest, and I had a question earlier. So UniQuest is a technology transfer unit at UQ. Tech transfer is basically an office where the individuals work and identify, what science researchers develop in the university setting and try and help them navigate the commercialization components, which usually includes key things like intellectual property protection, a commercialization strategy, early stage capital and seed investments, and really try and kind of get that good idea that might sit in a lab gathering dust otherwise, and kind of get it out there to the world. But that required, my project required me to work with UniQuest's tech transfer unit to kind of do some research. From there, again, these small kind of connections, right? I met someone at UniQuest. Through him, he actually came back to me and said, look, we got some summer internships. So started working at UniQuest, about a year after that, just on part-time, and that led to other experiences. So again, that's a great example of where I can literally kind of trace back my very first job to the PDP project in the biotechnology program.
Oh, that's amazing, Dr. Arjuna. And it's a perfect segue to the next question I had, which I wanted to direct to you firstly. So many biotechnology graduates start down the career path of academia, such as through an honors year or maybe through a PhD like yourself. But you've all ended up in industry rather than academia. And I know a few members of the audience today might possibly be debating whether they should go into academia or industry. So could you please explain how you navigated your choice between academic research and industry career paths? So I'll start with you, Dr. Arjuna.
Okay. So funny story. I originally, like I said, I started a science degree actually with the intention of doing postgraduate medicine. That all went sideways when I actually did, I think my first year biotechnology subject with Dr. Jimmy Botella, who I understand is still at UQ.
Yeah, my professor.
Yeah, he is. He's an awesome lecturer if you ever get him. But he's actually the first, I guess, academic to introduce me to the concept of biotechnology, right? And that it existed as a field. Fast forward a year later, I switched actual degrees and moved into the B Biotech program. When I kind of look back or look forward from there, again, attending those Oz Biotech conferences, one thing I observed at the time, this is classic when I think about it 20 years on, a lot of the CEOs from the biotech companies who are up on stage talking about the latest product, trying to get funding, they all had PhDs, every single one of them. And so I kind of, me and my student mind went, well, clearly a PhD is more important than any sort of formal business qualification. What I didn't know was what was really happening in the background was these guys were inventing really great ideas in the lab, and then VC investors would come along and go, here's some money, why don't you start a company and run it? And these guys are like, well, I don't know how to run a company. Well, we'll help you with it, but we need you to be the face of the company and the product. I wish I'd known that. But do I regret kind of going down that path? I kind of went down the PhD path because I enjoyed research, and I thought, well, I'm never going to come back and do a PhD if I go off and work, so I'll get it done now. I didn't end up using the PhD in a traditional sense, and then I didn't go off and do postdoctoral research fellow or fellowships, or I didn't end up doing more advanced research, but I did learn a lot of really useful skills I do today. One of which, it took me many years to really appreciate, but a PhD, especially in science, teaches you to multitask like nothing on the planet. By my third year of my PhD, I was trying to figure out how to multitask about 3, sometimes 5 experiments at the same time, trying to fit in parts of experiments, between incubations of others, and making sure I don't over trypsinize the cells in cell culture. And, you know, you get really good at managing lots of things in your head at the same time. And that's something that today, you know, I'm still recognized as being able to manage multiple projects and switch between different angles of my business. And I attribute that to kind of the PhD I got. So, you know, while I didn't use it in the traditional sense, it certainly worked for me. So when I finished my PhD, again, because I knew I wanted to go on the industry side, that's when I started going towards industry. But for me, I always kind of did that PhD when I was younger, A, because I enjoyed it, as I said, but B, also because if I didn't enjoy industry, it was a good fallback to go, well, I've got my PhD, I could go back to the bench and try for a postdoctoral fellow. And again, it's like that concept I mentioned earlier about keeping certain doors open as much as possible.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Arjuna. And then Lisette, for somebody who's ended up on the other side of this question, could you please explain how you navigated your choice between industry and academia?
Thanks, Vishak. Yeah, I had a non-traditional pathway actually into academia rather than into industry. So for those of you here who don't actually know, I, now that I'm lecturing in the biotechnology program, I'm also a graduate of the Bachelor of Biotechnology. So while, you know, Juna was talking about PDP, which is a product development proposal that we do in our either third year study, or if you're in the master's program in one of your first semesters, I also remember doing the product development proposal. And back then when I was coming through, we had to do a product development proposal both in our third year, but then also when we did our honours research year. And I found that I really, really enjoyed the process of trying to unpack the puzzle of how I could possibly get something out of my honours research project that could maybe one day, 5-10 years down the track, who knows, maybe even end up becoming a product that could be sold to help people in some way, and trying to navigate and pull together the finances, how much it was going to cost, how long it was going to take. And I really enjoyed that process of trying to figure out how this could be commercialized. And then when I finished my honours degree, my fellow honours students were all applying to do their PhDs, but I just didn't think that research path was for me. And because I enjoyed the PDP so much, I decided to try and get some formal business qualifications quite early on in my degree. So I went off and did a master's at UQ through the business school. So I wanted to learn the lingo about what business was and to be able to talk to people about the business of biotech. And I really enjoyed that degree, that master's degree. And then again, at the end of that master's degree, the idea of a PhD was kind of floated in front of me. And I had my professors in my master's talk about, you know, do you like to do a PhD? But I really wanted to get industry experience. I didn't know if a PhD was in my future or not, but I just knew that I wanted to go out and work in this industry that I'd heard so much about through my degrees. And I was really fascinated and excited to kind of get amongst it all, which I did. And I ended up working for a research organization, doing their marketing and website, and even managing some of their technology transfer, and working with UniQuest actually, because it was a research organization on campus. But after a few years, I did decide to go back and do my PhD. I think like you, Arjuna, I realized that it probably better to do it while I was on the younger side rather than before I got too involved in my career. But I always had the intention of doing my PhD and then staying in industry or going back into industry after my PhD. So trying to use my PhD as like a stepping stone to further my career within industry. But then while I was doing my PhD, I started doing some casual teaching and tutoring and lecturing. And one of the subjects that I was tutoring and then eventually lecturing in was a commercialization subject. And I ended up working with UniQuest. So as Arjuna mentioned, the main arm of UQ, or company associated with UQ that helps UQ researchers commercialize their research. And I worked on a whole range of different technologies. And I thought I actually like this mix of teaching and learning about commercialization and researching the commercialization process. So rather than focusing my research on chemistry or biochemistry, molecular biology, I decided to focus and then now pursue a career as a researcher looking at innovation and commercialization in the biotechnology industry. So I've had a bit of a non-traditional journey into my academic career, even though I kind of did start out thinking I would be in industry. But I'm really enjoying the mix and the opportunity to really understand deeply a problem in the industry and how we can improve the efficiency of our commercialization process. And I'm just wondering, Avi, if we could hear about your journey as well, and if you had a tipping point or a point where you were thinking about academia versus industry.
I was in mute again. In my case, though, I was thinking to do PhD initially, and then because of my placement I had in Thermo Fisher, that was the turning point that I decided to pursue the pathway towards industry. And then coming from a international background, I do wanted to also move here in Australia. And it so happened that my field of interest in biotechnology is also in demand. And the government that time was inviting immigrants who have that skill. So having this, I was lucky enough that my interest is in line for me to actually move to Australia. So that was basically the catalyst for me to pursue industry, because of the need of Australian government to have more talents in science, and then basically pave way for me to migrate here in Australia.
And Tara, I know that you went from honours Bachelor of Biotech and an honours research year straight into your industry career. Did you ever think about academia or PhD versus the pathway you took, or was there a choice that you made, and what helped you make that choice?
Yeah, no, I definitely considered the PhD route. Coming out of my honours, sort of reflecting back on the year that I'd had, I definitely still was interested in research, but I just couldn't find any topic that I could see myself pursuing with for 3 to 4 years, and still having any sort of soul left in me. So I decided at that point that if I couldn't see myself doing a PhD, then I would go into industry and explore the option of possibly doing an industry-based PhD later on if I needed to. So I went into industry, and I've sort of accidentally stumbled into a role where I get to do a bit of R&D in my day-to-day life anyway. So it does satisfy that little part of me that still wants to be on the bench and actually, develop processes and learn something new every day kind of thing. So there is light at the end of the tunnel for those who don't particularly want to do PhD, but still want to actually do science in the traditional sense, I guess. Yeah, so there's definitely roles out there. I would say, unfortunately, it's kind of a crux where if you do want to get into sort of like a principal scientist position, those sort of very, very high up research and development positions, you typically do need a PhD, but you can definitely find plenty of senior roles out there that do allow you to explore your creativity in a scientific sense.
Oh, thanks, Tara. And we've got about just under 15 minutes left of our webinar, and with our amazing panelists here today. But just want to ask 2 last questions, which I think are quite important for where we are as a society today. And the first one, and I might ask this of you, Avi, if you'd like to jump in first, and then I'll hand over to Arjuna and Tara as well. But focusing now and on the recent past and the immediate future with the pandemic that's been affecting us all in many, many ways, how have you found that the COVID-19 pandemic has changed the way your company or biotech companies in general are conducting business and research? And have things changed?
Personal level, during the pandemic, 2020 to 2021 current, I had 3 jobs. And then when I was doing project officer job, where my role was to support regulatory submissions for a novel drug for tumor, they have to consolidate the roles because the focus turned out, what the focus now is to address COVID. So that company I work for has to slow down and have to defer their logistics in distributing that drug. And on the process of consolidating the role, I was made redundant. And yeah, from that administrative role, I was quite worried if what is my next move. And then on the process, I found 2 weeks later, I found myself in as a research and development senior scientist in a medicinal cannabis company. At that time, they were also exploring using medicinal cannabis to actually ease it as an alternative to ease anxiety of people suffering due to COVID, things like that. And then through networks, by previous networks, I was then invited to apply for a role in Elum. So Elum have a lateral flow platform assay that they can use for any pathogen diagnostics. And because of COVID, they didn't have to refocus all that technology and tailor it to address COVID diagnostics. And that's when all the opportunities for science professionals boom in this company. And on the process, I was one of the person to get into this role and get involved with the mass scale production of home COVID test medical devices. So yeah, I think the pandemic has both positive and negative impact. It's going back to, in relation to the biotechnology, the program has prepared me both for doing a quality management and regulatory role in an administrative level, but then that didn't work. But I was well equipped enough through my electives doing protein technology courses, where it was not hard for me to go back and become a hands-on scientist again. So yeah, that's what was the impact to me at the personal level with this pandemic.
Thanks, Avi. And Arjuna, have you found there's been a big shift or change in the industry over the last 2 years?
Yeah, definitely. Very similar to Avi's experience. I think for me, and again, I'm not on the technical side anymore, not on the bench, but even in terms of how we work, right? So a lot of our employees had to adapt to working from home, as most people did. One thing we've been trying to figure out is getting better at this concept of asynchronous work. So you have people who are collaborating together, but in different time zones, and they have to use document collaboration and virtual collaboration tools very effectively to get work done that they previously may have traveled into a central location and work together to kind of solve over a period of time. Even as this pandemic will hopefully, I think, calm down, I think some of those that nature of work that's kind of resulted will stick around. And in the early days of COVID, a lot of us were kind of talking about how this was basically a major accelerant to digital transformation in most working environments. So what we've effectively seen in the last 2 years would normally have taken maybe 5 to 10 years to achieve. It's just basically compressed that in a much shorter timescale, and we are at a future that would have been a decade away, I think, realistically speaking. So I'm not expecting to travel anywhere near as much. Going back a few years, I had a travel load of up to 70% of my time. Before the pandemic, it was maybe 30 to 40%. That'll be less than 10%, even when travel opens up completely around the world. It's just too expensive to travel, make people travel to meet the way we used to. So some of these asynchronous virtual working styles, I think, are very much here to stay. And a lot of biotech companies, being technology companies, are needing to embrace them because it's a competitive edge not to, or rather a competitive loss not to. The other aspect is, for biotechnology companies, Illumina is in the genomic space, a pretty big company in the genomic space. So like many other companies like Elum, we were also developing products to help with COVID. And one of the things is, we had accelerated timelines. So it completely transformed, what companies think is possible or reasonably possible in terms of the product development cycle, the commercialization cycle, and then finally going to market. And many companies, Elum and Illumina and many others included, you know, we're all kind of producing products in kind of months rather than the years it normally takes. So again, that capability, that brain power, the know-how of doing that, it's now hey, we've done it once. So how would we replicate that again? Because it's now a competitive advantage to be able to move to an opportunity very, very quickly. So again, people who've had the experience working in these types of environments are going to be in high demand, because many companies will want to continue to replicate that kind of working style, simply because it's cheaper and you're going to beat the competition in order to when you work that fast.
Oh, yeah, I absolutely agree with you there, Arjuna. It's something with my research looking at the commercialization process. I'm particularly interested in the speed of commercialization. I think that's just completely revolutionized through COVID. Tara, do you have anything to reflect on, like even knowledge or skills that you think have changed as a requirement or that are beneficial in industry in the last couple of years?
I would definitely say, just because of COVID and the compression, I guess, it's had on the industry, in that, you know, you'd have a lot less applicants now for jobs. You have a much smaller working pool of people. So you're ending up with less people in these companies in order to get the same amount of workload out. So you'll end up with people who are more highly skilled in a lot of diverse areas. And so that becomes a huge advantage when you come to actually applying for new roles. And so, you know, the job market is quite desperate at the moment in terms of science in Australia. You know, it's no secret that a large amount of our talent and skills come from international people coming into Australia. And so I think, you know, the skills that we're looking for now in terms of, you know, what we could easily pick off a shelf, I guess, in terms of Australia, we're now focusing on internally quite a lot. So we're upskilling a lot of our scientists, which is, you know, excellent to see. We have heaps of resources to do that in terms of, you know, Merck, Sartorius all have upskilling programs that people use day to day. But in terms of like skills I didn't think I would need that much, I would say, you know, being able to communicate quite well with people in a really short amount of time is something that COVID has definitely forced onto a lot of people. Meetings are a lot shorter now. Everything is an email that is, you know, half a paragraph long. You have to be incredibly well organized in terms of, you may have multiple projects that you're working on. Like everyone has said, with COVID, you often have really compressed timelines. So you have to do all of your R&D, your engineering, your trial runs, your process simulation batches almost concurrently. And so that ability to multitask and understand the requirements for, you know, each section of commercialization and what's actually required in order to get them done in such a short period of time is a huge skill. And actually having that comprehensive understanding coming into, you know, a project is, you know, worth its weight in gold nowadays.
Thanks, Tara. And we were going to go to Q&A towards the end of the session, but I've just been monitoring the Q&A, and it seems everyone's been doing such a great job typing answers as we go. So I might just spend the last few minutes just asking our panelists one last question. And that is, if there was one thing you could say to yourself, or one piece of advice you could give to yourself when you were graduating from your biotech degree, in hindsight, what would that be? Avi, would you like to go first?
For me, I would do it the same. Like after I finish my bachelor's degree, try to explore what your degree can offer you. And then if you think it doesn't work for you, or you actually have to have a bit of deeper or actually specialize more in that field, then go for it. So in my case, my background is chemistry, and I thought I would focus more on biochemistry until I found myself in biotechnology, and that's where I am right now. And then from that in itself, you should also be open to opportunities. Like the COVID, for instance, it presented an opportunity for me to explore the medical devices world. So for my first 3 jobs, it was focused on pharmaceuticals, which is not really a COVID specific industry is more of like for anti-cancer drugs, anti-inflammatory drugs, and then to medicinal cannabis, and then yeah, things like that. And then this opportunity is presented to me. So yeah, just having an open mind and just go where science needs you, basically.
Thanks, Avi. And Tara, anything that you would like to tell yourself back when you were graduating?
I would definitely go to more Oz Biotech Biocheers events, to be honest. I've often actually gone to more of them past graduation than I have pre-graduation, which I think would have been much better if I swapped. But yeah, talking to industry professionals, I know it sounds scary and I know it's daunting, and honestly, it's my worst fear in the world, talking to strangers, but it definitely gets you jobs. Like, for example, you guys don't have to talk to me, but I can talk to you. At Vaxxus, we actually have 2 entry-level jobs now. We're looking for graduates to work within the operations department, which is where I work. So yeah, if you're happy to manufacture some needle-free vaccines, then that's a job for you. But yeah, it's a good step into industry to see how commercialization works. And we're a bit of a R&D sort of commercial manufacturer company. So it's a bit of a niche kind of area in the middle where you get to see a bit of both sides. So there's some opportunities out there if you just ask the right people.
That's fantastic, Tara. So hopefully some of our UQ recent biotech graduates will be able to join Vaxxus in the future. And in the last 60 seconds, Arjuna, do you have any advice you'd like to give to your former graduating self?
Yeah, going back in the time warp 20 years. Yeah, absolutely. I think part of it would be to relax, right? If I go back, I distinctly remember spending a lot of time very concerned about the uncertainty ahead, right? You know, knowing how your career will form, trying to charter the perfect course and making sure you have the best possible opportunities. But like I said, you know, my experiences show that most of the best opportunities that I came across in my career were formed through unexpected events that happened earlier. And when I look back at the unexpected events, they were generally as a result of seeking my passions, right? I'm passionate speaking to other people, passionate speaking to students about their experiences, for example. So that's the one piece of advice is I'd go back and make sure I say, you know, make sure you're true to your passions, because ultimately, if you follow your why, you're going to be good at it, because it's not a job anymore. It's something that you're really interested in. It's something that really drives you. And you'll be happy to kind of work hard at it until you kind of create the opportunities that fit you. And then the experiences themselves will come along, right? And the last piece is to not worry too much about the plan, right? It's not bad having a plan. I actually think it's a good idea because it shows forward momentum. But rather than being too obsessed about the destination, just worry about the direction you're heading and making sure you've got velocity, right? You're moving forward. And it's totally okay to kind of feel like you're going around in circles sometimes, because it's definitely a non-linear path, or it has been in my experiences. You will find your way back. Everything kind of connects in unexpected ways. So again, follow your passions and, you know, take those chances, particularly when you're younger, on those unexpected experiences.
Thanks so much, Arjuna. And that does bring us to the end of our session today. But I'm sure that our panelists would not mind if you contacted them either via, sorry, I'm trying to share the screen so that we can, no, I don't know what's happening. Here we go. What can you guys see now? Oh, sorry. Wait. There we go. I'm sure our panelists wouldn't mind if you contacted them via LinkedIn. If you have any questions, if you have any other questions for us at UQ, I've got the details here. Hopefully you can see it. Can you see the slide, or have I done the wrong button? Let me try that again. I think after all this time, we'd be used to using Zoom with 2 screens. If you have any other questions, please feel free to, gosh, what's wrong with my computer? Feel free to contact our Science International Engagement team. I'm happy to stay online for a few moments to keep answering questions if questions keep coming through, but I'd really like to take this opportunity just to thank our panelists so much for your time tonight, sharing your experiences with our audience. We've got a wide range of audience, different types of future students or prospective students trying to understand what biotech is, but also current students trying to understand how they can improve their job prospects, and also recent graduates who maybe want to re-engage with us. So I really thank everyone from the audience for joining us tonight as well, and the amazing questions that have been coming through the chat. So that does bring us to an official close. As I said, I'm happy to stay online for a few more moments if there's any burning questions, but if not, please feel free to email us or look us up on LinkedIn, and we look forward to engaging with you further. So thank you.
Lisette, are there any chat questions that we needed to go back and revisit live?
I was monitoring them. I'm not sure, Mark. Joe, did you see any that we didn't get to?
Yeah, there's actually a couple. If our panelists are interested in answering these questions, I think the audience would probably appreciate it. Maybe if Lisette or Avril or any of our panelists, one student was asking specifically, what can they do with biotech outside of research? And I know we've covered some examples, but maybe there's some burgeoning concepts or ideas or applications you'd like to cover.
Okay. Hi, Avril.
Hello.
Hi.
You want to go through it, or do you want me to?
You can.
Okay, so I've had a few questions. I've had a few common questions, so maybe I'll cover them all. And they're sort of linked. So in terms of jobs outside of research, well, one thing I would say is research also happens in companies. So research is not specific to academia. So you can also do research in companies. It's a slightly different focus because it tends to be far more commercially minded research, and you might enjoy that more. Venture capital companies are companies that have large pots of money in which they have to decide what to invest it in. And so some of these venture capital companies, such as Brandon Capital Partners, for example, is one here in and around Brisbane, they need to evaluate science in order to understand whether they'll ever get a return if they invest. So the whole purpose of that is knowing how to pick a winner. How are you going to pick an early stage technology that has the potential to be a global, have global impact, and therefore you get your money back and then more. So you grow that pot of venture capital funding. Some people go into jobs such as regulatory affairs, so they make sure that the products that a company or organization is producing comply with the regulatory guidelines, and that's a very responsible and well-paid job. Quality assurance, quality control, some people love that because they're involved in all different aspects of what a company does. Clinical trials management is something that some of our graduates have gone down that path. In intellectual property, so things like patents and trademarks, trade secrets, things like that. So intellectual property is something that some of our students get really interested in when they start to learn about it. And one of the panelists that was meant to be here today was one of my honours students, and she went in to become a patent examiner. Some take it even further, become a patent attorney, and they also, governments have science departments too, science and technology departments. Some people go into biomanufacture. So there's a lot that you can consider in biotech. Because of that commercial skill set that you also get, it opens up additional career opportunities for you. And so this links into another question that a few people have asked, is what's the difference between a science degree or a biomedical degree and biotech? The difference is really that commercial angle. So we look at how you can evaluate an idea, assess its worth, and ultimately decide whether you spend your time developing that idea. We teach you about intellectual property, regulatory affairs, quality control, and quality assurance. So you can see already from what I've said that that links into a multitude of different career options. And that's not something you get in a straight science degree or in a biomedical science degree. You can also use our medical biotechnology as a pathway to medicine and our other undergraduate streams as pathway to medicine. Typically, you'd choose the medical biotechnology or microbial biotechnology option because they both are probably most closely related to that medical field. And often some people start down a biomedical degree and decide, actually, I don't want to do medicine, but they're a bit more locked into that medical field and they haven't got that technology commercial skill set that you do from biotech. So hopefully that describes the differences. Can I add anything to that? Anyone?
I think that was really comprehensive. Thank you, Avril.
Okay.
Avi or Arjuna, would you like to add anything to that?
I had a few more jobs. I mean, that was really good, Avril. Like, and again, I think there's a limitless range of jobs, but the ones that I find people don't think about, actually where I am. So kind of, you know, there's a lot of companies supporting biotechnology from a scientific tools perspective, and they have a range of different roles. So there's loads of people in these sorts of roles. So sales, marketing, support. So using your technical skills to support other scientists, using technology from companies or biotech companies. There's usually a lot of roles there. More obscure, policy and government, right? A lot of technical policy writing really benefits from a technical background, but the applicability to society's problems is something that the biotech degree offers, I think. And the last one that, again, if you're kind of interested in shifting, you kind of started in the sciences, move into biotech, and you're like, oh, I really like the business side. Really big management consulting firms, Bain, McKinsey, BCG, etc. They love scientists because if you spend a career learning the scientific process or studies learning the scientific process of having a hypothesis and then trying to figure out a way to test it, that's the same problem solving methodology that a lot of those management consulting firms use for business problems as well. So they really like scientists in the way they think. So usually I know lots of people who, particularly after doing a PhD or master's, end up joining management consulting firms as well for a couple of years to really learn business.
Thanks, Arjuna. And just in the interest of time, I think we might just take one more question from the audience, which I note on the chat from Shafali. I was looking at graduate jobs all over Australia. When I apply for jobs, there are a few job requirements like GCP and GMP. And they want to know if these are requirements or mandatory requirements for employment or employability.
I'll answer that one. Usually this, the biotech program is a very good overview of GCP, GMP, ISO, anything that is, you know, related to a regulated industry. But I think for you to get into a role in the industry, you have to begin with a GMP company that has certification to manufacture this, you know, for US marketing, or maybe TGA approved companies or EU approved companies. So in my case, I started as an intern. So zero experience at that. The only way I know is through the lectures I've attended in the biotech, but that pretty much gives me an understanding what's the expectation. And as you grow into that field, it's more of the hands-on experience, because GMP in particular, where I am mostly exposed with, is actually a hands-on experience. The how you comply and how you actually process a material so that it will be consistent. So the quality is, you know, consistent from batch to batch. That level of understanding and experience. So it's not just, I would say you can learn it in a course, but mastering the art of, you know, like for example, the end roles like, you know, manager level, things like that, they all stream from those hands-on GMP experiences before they actually reach those before they become a quality managers or operations managers, or yeah, those kind of positions. So yeah, we always begin with an entry level position in a company that have this built into their culture or to their business as well. Yeah.
Thank you so much. This has been such an amazing set of questions from our audience and so insightful from our panelists. So we really appreciate everyone's time and our audience members' time in tuning in and being engaged and wanting to learn about the biotechnology industry. We've gone well over time, so we will wrap things up now. But this webinar has been recorded and the recording will be available. Vishak, I believe you're going to be making the recording available via the UQ Biotechnology Student Society's YouTube channel.
Yes. So the Biotechnology Society has a YouTube channel. We have a few previously recorded webinars, and all of our future events will be posted up there, including this event. So for any members in the audience who may have had any friends who missed this event, but they want to catch up on this, please feel free to go over to our YouTube channel. But again, I'd like to thank all the panelists for dedicating their time here today. And I'm sure I speak on behalf of everyone in the audience that your time is so valuable in helping us get jobs in the future. And even myself going into an industry of biotechnology, it was amazing to hear your valuable industry insights. So thank you so much, Avi, Dr. Aljana, and Tara for all of your time today.
Yes, I second that. And Avril, did you have any final words before we close up for the day, the evening?
Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you very much. And I always feel that biotechnology is a science that will change the world that we live in for the better. We have a lot of issues to solve, but I think we're very much up for the challenge. So I'm looking forward to welcoming many of the people who are on this call to UQ in the future. So best of luck. And if there's anything you need, do reach out. We can answer your questions.